live. Oh my God, it's Wednesday. It's Valentine's Day. And today you are going to fall in love with my guest. I'm so excited. We have a great author with us today. He is the author of 10 Seconds of Boldness. His name is Shawn Langwell. Didn't mean to hide the name right there, but he'll be on in just a sec. This is what we do every Wednesday with the Entrepreneurial Workshop for speakers and entrepreneurs and people that have to talk anywhere, things that need help with anything. I love to have guests come on. Today, we have the author of 10 Seconds of Boldness, but we can take questions too. So make sure you put questions in the chat. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn Live right now. We are everywhere. And rather than keep people waiting, I'm going to bring on the man, the myth, the man of the hour. Here is my his author and good friend of mine, Shawn Langwell. Hello, Shawn.
Great. Thanks for having me on this. This is just a trip. I'm so stoked to come full circle.
And it's, he had me on his show, which is a fabulous podcast out there. And if you want to, his book is right here, The 10 Seconds of Boldness, which we have right here. I try and keep that in frame. And they can kind of reach you at ShawnLangwell.com, I believe. Absolutely.
And when you go there, everything in marketing, as you guys know, since it's an open meeting for entrepreneurs, every single thing in marketing is always in flux. So when you go to the website, I recently moved it over. The color scheme is very perfect for Valentine's Day, but just so you know, I'm not totally thrilled with the color scheme. Check it out. Basically anything that you need to know about what I've got going on is there.
Shawn Langwell, not necessarily just bold, but a lover too. That's great. We got that. And you can come in here and join us. If you want to get in here now, just joinraylive.com, right? Like it says there, joinraylive.com. And you can join us and ask questions, or you can put them in the chat right here. Tell us about your book, for gosh sake.
So the Cliff Notes version, I mean, this is a tome. Basically, this book is a culmination of several different things. One, it's earned wisdom that I've learned in a marketing and sales and marketing and advertising career that spanned over 3 decades. There's also a lot of expertise from other business owners and colleagues that I know who are successful business owners, because I didn't want it to all be about me. But the bottom line is, this book initially started as a goal-setting book. The irony behind this and just the serendipities of life and how life gets in our way and the obstacles become our way, which, if anybody's out there has ever heard that before, the obstacles were huge boulders in my path when I was writing this book. It took me 6.5 years to complete. I started right after my first memoir, and a year into it, I'm like, I can't do this. And what happened was, I'm in sales, not commission only, but I've got a salary and I'm also on commission sales. And my numbers were going through the toilet. And I'm like, how can I write a book on goal setting when I can't even do it myself? So we'll pause there. We can fill in the other blanks unless you want me to go through and tell the whole story. But it's real interesting how this culminated into actually getting to fruition and becoming basically the ultimate guide for anything to do with solving problems and building self-confidence. In a nutshell, that's what the book is all about. And all of the mental obstacles we face, all of the imposter syndrome, all of the doubt, fear, insecurity that speakers or entrepreneurs or anybody who wants to be in business faces, or just people in general, that's in this book. There's an accompanying workbook that I'm going to start teaching on the next month and a half or so. That's what it's all about.
And if you have any sort of fear about your work, sales, you're an entrepreneur, if you're afraid to get in here and see us, that's why you should be here. We can talk you through it. Come on in with joinraylive.com. Put your questions in the chat. We can see that. Pop those in there. I'll put that on the screen there as well. It's great to have you here. If you have fear, let's push that comfort zone. I'm a big fan that you can never step outside your comfort zone. You just have to push the walls out, because you'll never get me to jump out of a plane or bungee jump or do anything like that. But you could get me. I would stand on the bridge and watch you do it. And that
Mhm.
takes me one step closer to getting hooked up on there and doing it myself. So you push out your barriers. It's like, how big is your comfort zone? Is it tiny? It's the cell that you live in. Is it a cell? Is it a cell or a cell block, a prison, or is it pretty darn? Is it one of those federal countrywide things that you can go to and play tennis with your comfort zone? What do you think, if there was one comfort tip you could give, or confidence tip that you could give, Shawn? What do you think the number one thing that would make it easier for someone who's scared to do something to do it?
It's a great question, and I don't think you intended this as a loaded question. But when I wrote this book, a good friend of mine was asking these questions similar to this, and he kept answering his own question. He's all, "What's the answer?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, 10 seconds of boldness." "What's the answer?" "Oh yeah, 10 seconds of boldness." Well, what the heck is 10 seconds of boldness? Why that title? Why that? And it's an answer to the question that everybody has. Is it's not about thinking. It's not about another freaking strategy. We got strategies in how to coming out of our ears. If you're in the self-help space or the self-improvement space, we have more strategies than we could ever implement in our lifetime. And that's actually part of the problem, because we start overanalyzing and overthinking all these different things, and we're stuck in analysis paralysis and we never do anything. So the simple answer is to do something. And that requires 10 seconds of boldness to expand that comfort zone, even if you don't have all of the answers. And that is this. You and I know this from being in Toastmasters. Watching people come into Toastmasters, the number one reason that they come in there is because they lack the confidence of public speaking. You told me when I had you on my show that public speaking is way the heck up there above everything else, that death is actually number 6. Public speaking is number 1. So in synchronicity with that, what do people need to do? Stop thinking and start doing.
Yeah, and it's just like it's just like the 5-second rule when you drop something on the floor. You got to
Mm-hmm.
pick it up fast before the bad stuff gets on it. And if you don't react, you get where it gets in your head and you start thinking, well, I could, maybe not, and maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, I shouldn't, oh, I don't know. And that's where things go wrong.
Yeah.
And
The-
I think one of my favorite quotes is, sloppy progress beats perfection every single time.
yeah. And a lot of people, including me, have this tendency to not want sloppy, that we feel inadequate and less than, or, we don't want to make mistakes. And newsflash, folks, ask any successful entrepreneur, business owner, leader, famous basketball, football, baseball player, how many, what it took for them to succeed. And the ones that are the greatest are the ones who failed the most. They're not afraid of failure. They actually got in the batter's box and swung at so many pitches. We've all heard the analogies, but they're very true. And staying in this space of fear, of not taking the action that is necessary for the fear of potential outcomes, which are basically lies that we choose to believe. And that's what I talk about a lot in here, is this false narrative and belief system that we hold on to, that we buy into our own mental BS. And that impedes our ability to actually succeed in life. So 10 seconds of boldness, the title, just to put a bow on that story so I don't forget about it. I wrote this book, Ray. I kept going through it. I got to a part where it was two things happened. One of my clients actually said, a goal setting book, that's transactional. Goals are just transactional. And it took the wind out of my sails. But in hindsight, I understand now what she was talking about, that all success is not an end destination. And that's been told 100,001 times over and over and again. What this book does, and what other books out there help you do, is to build the mental and behavioral and the thinking processes and habits to actually go through the process. And that's what I teach in here. So what happened is, I've been in sales for 30 years. I don't know very many salespeople that wake up in the morning and say, I'm stoked to make cold calls today. It just, anybody who tells you that, they're full of it. there may be a small percentage that really get fired up about picking up the phone and making cold calls on a daily basis. I don't buy it. So what happened is my sales went through the floor, and I was worried I was going to lose my job. And I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I literally wrote on a Post-it note the words 10 seconds of boldness and put it above my phone on my desk. And I stared at that for about 3 weeks, Ray, feeling like that 10,000-pound phone, picking it up and mentally head tripping about what I was and wasn't going to do. And finally, I just said, screw it. I need to pay my mortgage. And if I don't do this, I might lose my job. So desperation is a huge motivator. It's not the ideal situation, but I was in a desperate spot. And I said, all right, screw it. I got nothing to lose. And I started making calls, and I started figuring it out and making warm calls and building rapport and all the things you and I talked about when I had you on my show, of learning by doing and being willing to trip over my own words, like I've done on this podcast or this show 2 or 3 times already, and not worry about it. And what ended up happening was this thing called the pandemic came along, and people are freaked out about business and nobody's buying anything. Well, I'm in the news and news media, and we were part of, the people that are necessary businesses. And as such, I did my best to try and reach out to all my clients and make sure that they were being supported. And what ended up happening in that 2-year period from 2020 to 2022, 2.5 years, I had the best sales career of my entire life. And I blew all the sales numbers out of the window to the tune of 35 to 40% month over month and year over year. And it was a direct result of the principles that I put together in this book that are not new and unique, but I applied them. And that's the difference. You asked at the beginning, what do? You do it. You don't think about it. You don't talk about it. You don't just write it down. You actually get in the game and swing at any pitch and keep swinging until you make contact, and then you figure it out from there.
Well, what's funny is that you've heard the term self-discipline, and all you need is just to have to do it, right? Well, the key is, how do you trick yourself into doing what's right for you? And the 93-year-old man one time told me that self-discipline is simply the process of tricking yourself into doing what's right. And the example he used was kale. He said skinny people have tricked themselves to believe that kale tastes good. And he looked at me and said, and you probably like donuts. But it's little things like how you get yourself to talk to strangers. One of the things that if I have to call some people and I don't feel like doing it, what I'll do is I'll pick up the phone and I'll call somebody that I want to talk to. And then as soon as I'm done talking to that and having a great conversation, I just hang it up and pick up the person that I wasn't wanting to talk to. And that carries over. So what do you do to, fix those kind of things? And you're right, there's nothing new under the sun. But people like you and I are always trying to think of different ways to present it to people, because it's how the things, because you had the Post-it with the 10 seconds of boldness on there. I just came up with this idea of, and I just put this down, the self-perfection detection. You need to have your own self-perfection detection to let yourself know that, hey, I'm trying to be perfect. Let's just put it out there and do it. You need a button, a meter that just goes off. Self-perfection detection. And it rhymes. And I love the rhyme, Shawn.
Yeah. And to those ends, I had a rare opportunity. I hadn't even finished the final proofs of this. And I came back from vacation after the first vacation we got to take after the pandemic to Kauai. And my boss is like, I want to have you speak at our sales meeting. And I'm like, I hadn't even finished the book. I hadn't totally got my head around it. But I got an opportunity to actually present to my colleagues at one of our 2 annual sales meetings and talk about this book. I don't know if the chief revenue officer ever read the whole thing. He may have skimmed through it. I know my publisher did, but the chief revenue officer came up with something that is rhyming, just like you like to do, and plays on this theme. He didn't give me any credit for it, and I don't really give a rip because it doesn't matter, but it's no risk it, no biscuit. No risk it, no biscuit. Nice. Take a chance on yourself. So I thought that was kind of cute, but It is what you talked about too is something that I had forgot. The simple things that we can do that are manageable and not so scary. And I do that sometimes. I'll pick up the phone and call 2 or 3 people that I know that I just need to get some kind of conversation going, either collect artwork or get a renewal for an ad. And that's what James Clear talks about with the habit stacking and atomic habits and just these progressive, it's a progressive realization of a worthy dream or goal or ideal. And it just means doing the work on a regular basis. And then you start figuring it out. And that last quote was from Earl Nightingale, not Shawn Langwell. So yeah, I think I lost you, so I'll just keep going because I know you can come back.
No, I heard. I was just. He could be unstable. Who knows? But it's the ideas that just acting on the atomic habits that I love so much, and I've had people that your habits are stacked based on where you are. Sometimes the people that went over to Vietnam and got addicted to heroin, when they came back, a lot of them no longer were addicted to heroin because they weren't in the triggers weren't there. The triggers were not the same. And Rena says, you are a robot right now. Am I doing the robot and freezing? And
it unfroze a little bit, but yeah. But that's the flexibility of this too, Ray, is, we just got to roll with it. And you talk about this a lot too. And I think you talked about it on my podcast, which if anybody ever wants to check it out, Ray did a great show. The podcast name is Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You. And, I asked Ray to be on there because of who you are and what you've already done. You helped me as a mentor in learning how to speak. And I know you coach other people who want to do this on a regular basis. So it's about a collection and a collaboration, I think, is all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's your Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You, the podcast by Shawn Langwell. 10 Seconds of Boldness, the book by Shawn Langwell, and also the workbook that is also accompanying, which I do have, but it is on my floor.
I gave you that for all that free advice that you gave me. I mean, because Ray is a walking encyclopedia of just wit, wisdom, and one of the things that I love whenever we sit down to have coffee is your mind just goes like that. And God forbid we should ever sit down and do a brainstorming session, because it probably lasts 2.5 days because the wordplay just goes and goes and goes. And yeah, I mean, what do people need?
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Well, I was just going to say, with your audience, what are people looking for most? Because you and I talked a lot about we know what people need. What do people want right now? What do people really want in their business, in their profession, in their personal life? Because not everybody wants to take care of what they need. And that takes a little bit more than 10 seconds of boldness. But what do people really want right now, Ray?
Well, and it's not really what they want sometimes, it's what they need to do. And that's where 10 seconds of boldness comes in. But it's, people generally want, one of 4 things. They want to have more esteem. They want to be known for things. They want to be able to do more things in life. They want to get more, gain more in either time or money or whatever it is. And they want to enjoy life more. And those are the things that they manifest themselves differently in others. One of the things that I think that people don't do well is ask themselves or tell themselves what they want. So, for example, because whenever we ask our brains a question, it gets answered, right? About 2,000 times every time you ask a question. So you better be specific when you ask that question. And if you believe in goals or manifesting or whatever, however you want to put it, if you don't get specific, you're going to get a version of it that your brain thinks. Your brain's very logical. If you say, I want to lose weight, you will lose weight some way, shape, or form. It may not be the way you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. I go, you know what? Like every 10 years, I think, I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, after 4 consecutive 10-year periods of doing that, well, now I had to lose 40 pounds. Okay. And so I just threw it out there. And then, 2 weeks later, I'm also thinking, man, I keep seeing these ads. What the hell is A1C? And then I go in and they test my blood and they go, oh yeah, you've got like diabetes. You have to like change your diet and lose weight. So I lost 40 pounds, but it's a diabetic diet where instead of, if I had said, I want to through exercise, eating more healthy and living a better life, I want to lose that. Maybe they could have foregone the diabetes part. The brain doesn't know how you're asking it unless you tell it. So you have to be real. Yeah, you have to have a clear message of what you're looking for. Oh wait, here's a comment from Dad Bets looking for jobs and they need guidance on reaching out to effective employers. They are afraid to do it.
Yeah, and to Chad's
I agree.
comment there, there's a lot of that. I mean, I haven't had an interview for a job in a long time, and there's just that natural proclivity and resistance to doing something that is, you talked at the beginning of the show, expanding that comfort zone. And I'm curious as to what it is that you touched on it with the AC1. That's the desperation, and we wait for certain things until we get to a place where we don't really have a choice, or we have a much more dire and drastic decision to make. There's millions of us, myself included, that are in jobs that you may be super qualified to do, but you've run its course and you want to go do other stuff. And where do you find that courage to take the leap out? What is that perfect balance? And what is it that people really need to feel a little bit more confident? And you and I talked about this briefly. There is a hierarchy. There's bottom security level, if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of just meeting our basic needs. But as we start to evolve above and beyond those basic security needs, we start to see glimpses of something that's much more. But when it comes down to job changes and things like that, we automatically drop back to and default to these security levels, because that's the fear that is embedded in who we are, not just in our mind, but in our entire body. And it takes time for that to go away, and it takes practice, right, Ray?
Absolutely. It's almost like the whole, I mean, there's not a person on the planet that doesn't have some form of imposter syndrome every day. There's something that you go, oh my God, every time I meet a new group of people that are a group of speakers, I think, oh, they must know more than me because they've been doing this longer than me. Like, go to Toastmasters, like, oh, okay, Toastmasters, great organization. Don't get me wrong, but you downplay your own experience because you think somebody might figure out that I'm not perfect. And people really need to have permission not to be perfect. Nobody wants people to be perfect.
We need to give ourselves permission to not be perfect. And that is a much deeper conversation that I could talk for days on end about. But I think that there's this false perception that we need to measure up, and it's tied to our life story, our history, our upbringing, our culture. There's a lot of different factors that play into that. But when we learn to move beyond this need for validation, to feel like we need to be perfect and we're okay being who we are on a path that is improving, when we get there, and I'm speaking for myself because in early recovery, I've got 37 years of clean and sober time on top of 3 decades in marketing and advertising. I learned a lot from that, and I learned how to apply it into my work life and other areas of my life, because it's a self-esteem problem. It's an obsession of the mind coupled with a physical allergy, and it's inherent and rampant and manifests itself in numerous ways, most of which are some form of mental illness that we all have to a certain or lesser degree. And it's learning how to navigate those waters of what we can and can't do that really make us stronger. And staying stuck in a place of denial or fear is not a solution. Um, Going gung ho, beating on our chest, saying, I'm going to conquer the world and I'm a badass and I can do it all. That's also a bunch of horse shit because it doesn't work. It doesn't last. The true measure of lasting change for any of us is to be willing to sit with where we are, as uncomfortable as those feelings are, and not try and put a band aid on them. And when we get to that level of acceptance and we no longer fear that stuff that we think we're afraid of, that is where transformation happens. That is where the breakthroughs in all human accomplishment happen. And until we get there, we're going to keep doing this like a little rat in a hamster, or a hamster in a wheel going round and round and round and round, and nothing ever is going to change. And that's just the honest God's truth.
Or a little anything in your computer that's trying to find something to it amazes me how we go through things and we take advice sometimes that we shouldn't take because we doubt ourselves and we move forward with what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah.
And if you are going to take other people, look at where they are. Are they? If follow them, but don't follow every single person that you talk to, because that makes it difficult.
Yeah, and at some point you have to choose your own path, right? Right. I mean, you can't, if we're trying to appease or follow or emulate everybody else, there's a certain amount of that works because you want to follow and learn what other people who are where you want to be and get around people like that. The power of association is huge. But at some point you have to apply these things and then start to find your own path and what works for who we are and our own personalities, because we're not alike. I mean, there's people that are introverted, there's introverted extroverts, extroverted introverts, there's people who are shy, more good with numbers, there's personalities. I mean, it's this perpetual dynamic ball. There is no one personality trait that somebody needs to have. It's predicated on the different environments that we are interacting with, the different people we're interacting with, and we're very complex and dynamic human beings. And I think part of the challenge with self-improvement and personal growth as a whole is people are still trying to find this magic bean. And guess what? There isn't a freaking magic bean. The magic bean is you, and you being willing to be bold enough to get out of your own way and go do some things and be willing to skin your knees. And that sounds super harsh, but it's how you learn. And if you want to increase the learning curve that much faster, be willing to take a chance on yourself and take some risks. And I have learned so much more when I get pushed out of my comfort zone. I don't like it when I get put there not of my own volition. I really don't like that. But if I've made a conscious choice to take a step forward and then I keep going, it's really, really exciting when you do that. You know, you guys asked me to, you threw me out of the frying pan into the fire when I joined Toastmasters. I thought I'd had all the, I thought I had it going on, and I was scared spitless the first speech I had to give. And I still get my knees knocking a little bit when I got to give a talk, but I do it anyway.
Well, it's the main thing is that when we do this, I don't think you can go outside your comfort zone. I think you have to push the wall out. So whenever you run into that uncomfortable feeling, that's you hitting the wall. That's you hitting the wall. And by hitting the wall, it inevitably moves it out further. Because I don't think if there's something that's just going to make you so uncomfortable, you're never going to jump over unless life is on the line, right? Mm-hmm. And what I really, one of the things that I've always wondered is, why do we have to kind of have the whispers of mortality in our ear before we'll push something to make bigger, or something we've never done before? That's, we have to be thrown off the bus I remember riding on the side of a Volkswagen Bug down the neighborhood. So it's going maybe 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, which doesn't seem fast. And I decided that I could run next to it just by jumping off. Well, 10-year-olds don't move at 10 miles an hour the second.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to picture this. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like a Roadrunner.
Well, it's like, yeah. Oh, yeah. What a great idea. This is where, and a lot of, right. I was an idiot. A, Volkswagen. B, for thinking I could run alongside the Volkswagen. And C, for not thinking that or that I could possibly fail in those moments. We get stuck in this kind of like this prison of perfection all the time, and the good stuff, if you can look at it and go, that's very unique. Oh my God, I don't know if I can do this or not.
And then when you do, I mean, one of those stories, there's a few stories I included in this book, but the one you reminded me of, running alongside the Volkswagen Bug and 10 miles an hour, and I could just imagine that looking at it. But one of the stories I included in the book, just for color, is when we were in Hawaii. I wanted my son to not be afraid of jumping off of stuff, and at the time he wasn't. We really hadn't done anything. I grew up out in San Jerome Valley. We were jumping in the inkwells in Samuel P. Taylor Park all the time as a kid because I was comfortable with that. My son had never really done anything like that, so we went up on the top of this above Rainbow Falls on the big island of Hawaii and went up through the little trail and the banyan tree right there, and then walked down. And it was in the summertime, so the water was fairly low, but found our way through to this little rock. And I kept looking to make sure it's as safe as possible. And I encouraged him, I pushed him a little bit, but that joy and the glee of literally getting up there, even though it was only probably 6 or 7 feet up, and holding my son's hand when he was 7, 8, or 9 and saying, let's just do it. 1, 2, 3, jump. And it's one of those things that I don't ever forget it. I don't know if he'll remember, but I like to do those things because my dad did it for me. My memoir opens with the story of me being on the diving board. I don't know how I remember this stuff, but I was less than 2 years old, and I remember standing on this diving board at the bathhouses at the Sutro Baths in San Francisco. And my dad and his friends in there came, jump, jump, jump. And I'm like, hell no, it's too far up. Because when you're that little, things seem insurmountable. So as adults, we look at problems and obstacles as way, way, way bigger than they are. And when we take a step back and we look at the big picture, or we see somebody else, like you just talked about, do it, then we begin to believe. So the problem with all this stuff is not what we think it is. The problem, as you alluded to, is what we believe we are or are not capable of. And the mind will believe what we want it to believe, period. That's neuroscience backed up. That's not Shawn Langwell. That's not Rang. And that is neuroscience backed up, that the mind believes what we want it to believe. It doesn't know the freaking difference. So if we want to change that mindset, we have to change the input. And it's really, really simple on the surface, but to put it into practice, it's not.
Well, that's one of my favorite topics, because the brain answers every question you ask it. I mentioned this earlier. Remember, every question you ask it, you get about 2,000 answers to that. So how you ask yourself questions determines where you go. And my favorite example is how many times will people say, why am I such an idiot? Oh, you want to know why you're an idiot, Shawn? Here you go. Your brain's like, here's why you're an idiot, Ray. This happened to you when you were a little kid. Remember that? You hung out of the Volkswagen and tried to jump right off the side. That's why you're an idiot. This is why you're an idiot. They'll give you 2,000 answers that you ask the question as to why I'm an idiot. Here are the answers. How can I do this better? How can I be smarter in the future? How can I do that? Those are all questions that get you better answers.
Mm-hmm.
in there. And
And it is. You just answered the. You answered the question. Thanks, Rena, because it's reframing. The rewiring process is the simplest part. Is to reframe our approach and how we question these things, and reinforcing what you just said of why am I an idiot. The brain knows, the subconscious all the way down to the deepest parts of our collective unconscious come back up to the surface, and they give you 1,001 reasons why you can't do it. But if you turn the dial just a little bit, and instead of, you told me this and you just reminded me of it, instead of why can't I, how can I? Why can't I, how can I? Why can't I, how can I? What if dot dot dot, to use your phrase. And
yep, what if? Why
that's
am I?
it.
Not
No.
why am I is a bad thing. How can I is a good thing. So ask questions where the answers are going to be positive, and it's amazing to see how your mental psyche goes. And Rena, who's made a few comments on there, she deals with accountability, and that's something she talks about all the time. It's amazing how you can go from being your belief in you versus your belief in why you can't do something. There are so many people, and I used to be very, very negative, and I worked with one of the most positive women in the world, and she drove me absolutely crazy. And every time you asked her how she was doing, she would say, "Super fantastic." And I was like, "Oh, you perky little so." And one time I was standing there and somebody asked me, "Ray, how are you today?" So I mocked her. And I just said, I looked at her and I said, "Oh, super fantastic." And when I said it, I did it just like that. I just started laughing. And in the middle of that laugh, I thought, "Oh, crap, this really works." And it does. If you smile right now,
I was just going to say, the simplest thing to change your mood and your attitude is the
yeah,
one word, and it's a one action. It's smile. It'll change everything.
you feel better than you did 2 seconds ago. And it's not me doing that. It's you doing it. And you can fake the smile. And then just if you start laughing, then all of a sudden life is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, I feel pretty good now. And the
Well,
only thing we do control is our attitude. That's it.
yeah.
Everything else, somebody else has a hand in.
One of my publishers, or the ad director at a place I used to work at, said, one of the master skills of psychology, and this is a little Glenn Rossish, but she said one of the master skills, if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a great movie if you're in sales. It's also pretty harsh and rough, but basically the bottom line is coffee's for closers. She said, if you master the skill of learning how to tell people to go to hell and let them enjoy the trip, that is the epitome of leadership and management. And what you just talked about is, I used to do that just when I was just off at somebody and a customer when I was waiting tables, like, "Oh, you're just a freaking idiot." And I'd sit there and smile the whole time, but I'd say it under my breath. But I felt good. It was tongue in cheek, but that little thing, I mean, just you smiling got me smiling. I'm sitting here getting all serious, and this
Well,
changes everything.
so I had a boss one time. I'm interviewing this person, and my boss comes in during the interview, and he picks up the guy's resume and he looks at it and he goes, "So what happened at this last job you had?" And the guy says, "Oh, I didn't get along with the boss very well." "Okay, what about the one before it?" "Oh, well, the boss and I, we just didn't see eye and eye." "Okay. What about the one before that?" He goes, "Oh, that boss, we really, really butt heads." And after a while, my boss said, "Wow, you must be the most unlucky person I've ever seen to have 6 horrible bosses in a row." He's like, "Yeah, it's really been tough,
Oh,
right?"
good God. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in control of that. We get to create the environment that is around us. And the hardest thing in the world, which I think it gets easier as you get older, is to just not hang around those toxic people.
Yeah. And to also, Ray, I mean, you and I haven't really talked about this, but there's a lot of when we're feeling insecure, and this gets into psychology a little bit, I am not a trained clinical psychologist or cognitive therapist, but as a practical psychology of what we know, we kind of create our own environment. And if we're walking around with a pissed off attitude, or we're being negative about ourselves, you know what? We're going to attract that. And the other side of that is it's real easy to be judgmental and gossipy about how screwed up everything, including the world, is around us when we're not feeling comfortable. Okay. So, and I'm crossing the line a little bit here. This is an entrepreneurial show, but I feel like it would be remiss of me not to share something that I learned long time ago in the
Shawn,
12 step.
dare
Yeah,
to be great, dare to be you. Go for
that's
it.
go for it. All right. No apologies necessary. There we go. So if you I totally lost my train of thought, but you know what? What I was getting at is you need to be willing to take a look in the mirror. And that is sometimes the hardest thing for us, is that we want to point the blame everywhere else instead of looking at our phone, our reflection of ourselves in the phone or a mirror. And I heard a long time ago, you've probably heard it before too. If you're pointing the finger of blame at somebody else, take a look at it. It's a loaded gun, and there's three fingers pointing back at you. That's where the problem lies. There's one forward and three back. So the problems that we create for ourselves, or that we feel are big fears and anxieties, or problems that are insurmountable, by and large, 95% of them are BS. The other 5% are things that we can actually control and take control of and change. But in order to change that, it requires an element of honesty, of awareness, and ultimately the courage to actually want to change. And tied into that, which is part of the 5-step process in 10 seconds of boldness, is understanding the wheel that makes this thing move. And the wheel is one word. It's called why. You can be desperate or you can be ambitious. Somewhere in between those two lie a reason for you wanting to motivate yourself to want to change, to do anything differently. Otherwise, nothing will ever change in your life. Life and everything else keeps changing. But as far as your world, this sphere that Ray talked about, this comfort zone, that is never, ever going to change until you make a decision to start pushing and expanding that ball to where that ball encompasses more people in a bigger sphere of influence. And when you do that, your entire life and world will change.
Shawn Langwell, where can they get a hold of you if they want?
I'm going to be at the San Francisco Writers Conference talking about the audiobook production of this book here on Saturday, 10 o'clock. It's not expensive to get in there, but if there are any authors listening to this, please come by and see us. My wife and I will be there Friday night for an event that's open to the public, selling this book, the workbook, and my other one, which is called Today's the Day. Outside of that, ShawnLangwell.com, that spot right there. And, I respond to email. My email's on there. It's ShawnLangwellWriter@gmail.com. If you have a need, or you have a business, or you feel like anything that I shared here is something that could benefit you and or your teams, reach out to me. I'm available for coaching, consulting, speaking, inspiring, encouraging, whatever it is that you need. If you have a specific need, I might be able to help you out. So this is above and beyond my day job. I'm doing this on my lunch hour now, and I got to break free. But you know what, Ray? Thank you for this opportunity, because you're forcing me to push my boundaries. And I don't always like to do that, even though I like to write books that says 10 seconds of boldness. So thanks for pushing me a little bit, buddy.
There's a big difference between a writer and a speaker. The writers tend to use much bigger words. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend. And it's great having you. ShawnLangwell.com. What's the name? What's the event that this Saturday you're talking about?
It's the San Francisco Writers Conference at the Hyatt Regency in the Embarcadero, across from the Ferry Building in San Francisco.
And Shawn's wife, Chrissy, is also an author. And I get more thing. Hey, Chrissy Langwell has another book you should buy. And my Alexa knows her by like a first name basis. I get interrupted. Hey, there's another thing from Chrissy Langwell. So tell her that she's always in my house somehow, and I can't figure out how to lock her out of it.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, all the best to you, and I'll see you in October. Ray, by the way, has agreed to come up and be participating in the Sonoma County Writers Conference, of which I am the chair for the second time around, and that is going to be a hoot. We'll dive into what exactly that's going to entail, but I'm stoked because you've got a lot to bring to the table that authors and introverts out there will benefit from. An hour to an hour and a half of listening to you help get them up out of their seats and in front of people with a smile on their face. So thank you, buddy.
It'll be a revival. It'll be fantastic. It'll be the cloud of joy will be surrounding all these writers and introverts. They will be on their feet, wafting through the arena with an ambiance of joy. I'm trying to write it as I go along with that, but there we are. That's why I have no editor, so there we go. But next week here, 11 o'clock, we'll be back the regular time next week. Will be Charlie Posnick talking about finances as you start and you grow and what you need to do. And everybody needs to hear something about that. So think of your questions for next week. If you're seeing this after it's done and you have questions, put it in there. We'll get to it. Either Shawn or I'll get back to you. I'll tell them what the questions are. You can answer. You can ask him. You can ask me. Anything you want. Thanks so much. What a great day for a Wednesday.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it, buddy.